a normal yield curve, it's like the longer the maturity, the higher the rate. That's common sense. So if I'm going to lend somebody money for a month, I might charge a certain interest rate, but if I'm going to lend you money for 10 years, I want a much higher interest rate because there's a lot more risk, inflation, default, credit risk, who knows what. So a normal yield curve is upward sloping. The longer the maturity, the higher the rate. Okay, right now, yield curves are inverted, which means they're downward sloping, which means the longer the maturity, the lower the rate. Why would you take a lower rate on a 10-year treasury note than you would on an overnight loan, that's where we are today, by the way. The overnight rate is over 5, and the 10-year rate's 3.6, give or take. Well, why would you take a lower rate for a longer term loan? It makes no sense.
To understand the current situation, let's begin by talking about the yield curve. Normally, a yield curve slopes upward, meaning that longer-term investments yield higher interest rates compared to shorter-term ones. This makes sense, since there is more risk involved in lending money over a longer period. However, what we're experiencing now is quite different. As Jim Rickards, a renowned economist, explains, a normal yield curve is upward sloping, with the longer the maturity, the higher the rate. According to Rickards, this is common sense. Lending money for a longer term carries more risk, so a higher interest rate is expected. But something unusual is happening in today's economy. The yield curves we're witnessing today are inverted, which means they slope downward. In other words, longer-term investments are offering lower interest rates than short-term ones. This raises an important question: why would anyone accept a lower rate for a longer-term loan? This inverted yield curve is a clear signal that something is amiss in the economy. It goes against conventional wisdom and market expectations. Some experts call it a warning sign of a looming recession. But from history, can such economic behavior be traced? To put it into perspective, let's look at a historical example. During the 2008 financial crisis, we witnessed a similar phenomenon with an inverted yield curve. It turned out to be a precursor to the economic downturn that followed. And in my opinion, I would say that the experts, economists, and many others aren't far from the actual truth. Soon, we might be heading towards another economic crisis, in other words, a recession. Ideally, nobody knows the actual time this will happen, but the probabilities, I would say, are very, very high.
A normal yield curve, it's like the longer the maturity, the higher the rate. That's common sense. So if I'm going to lend somebody money for a month, I might charge a certain interest rate, but if I'm going to lend you money for 10 years, I want a much higher interest rate because there's a lot more risk, inflation, default, credit risk, who knows what. So we are today, by the way. The overnight rate is over 5, and the 10-year rate's 3.6, give or take. Well, why would you take a lower rate for a longer term loan? It makes no sense. Well, it makes no sense unless you think the bottom is falling out of the economy. Because if I buy a 10-year note with a 3.7% yield to maturity, which I could do today, that seems low compared to the 5% for the overnight rate, but that might look really good a year from now. If interest rates are 1%, if the 10-year note is 1%, that 3.7% rate is going to look really sweet. It's like, hey, I gotta make it getting.
The presence of an inverted yield curve, historical evidence from past crises, and the insights of experts all point to a concerning economic landscape. While the exact timing and severity of a potential recession remain uncertain, it's essential to stay vigilant and prepared. As we navigate through these uncertain times, it's crucial to stay informed, adapt our financial strategies, and take proactive steps to safeguard our economic well-being. By keeping a close eye on market indicators, staying educated on economic trends, and seeking guidance from trusted sources, we can make more informed decisions. Remember, no one can predict the future with absolute certainty, but by staying informed and proactive, we can better position ourselves to weather any potential economic storm that lies ahead. So, let's embrace this opportunity to learn, grow, and navigate the ever-changing economic landscape with optimism and confidence. Together, we can overcome challenges and find new avenues for success. Stay curious, stay cheerful, and until next time, keep exploring the fascinating world of economics.